Thank you, Stephen. Good afternoon, everybody. For those of you still awake, welcome to the graveyard shift. For this year's presentation, I intend to touch on a number of areas and provide you with some updates. The areas I intend to cover include updates on the division, outsourcing, conflicts of interest and how they're managed, cases, and finally, just talk very briefly about external relationships, both domestically and internationally. So if we start with division news, I'm very pleased to see a number of new faces within the division this year as a result of some movement of staff externally. The staff we have recruited come with some excellent skill sets to complement the already experienced staff and members we have. And with their addition, we have strengthened the division considerably. Of the appointments made, I will now have a Deputy Director in Callum McVean, which is the only addition in numerical terms, but this is required due to the ever-increasing workload that is coming on the division. I'm also pleased to announce the appointment of our new regulatory lawyer, who will be providing assistance to the enforcement and financial crime divisions. He arrives in Guernsey at the end of this year from New Zealand, where he was a senior solicitor for the Financial Markets Authority, and we all look forward to working with him in the future. If I can now move on to outsourcing. Last year, I talked to you all about the outsourcing of functions and the rules that the licensee is bound by in that regard. Regrettably, we have seen a number of instances again this year in cases which we have brought to fruition, in that too much reliance is being placed not only on the compliance function being outsourced, but on the outsourcing of investment functions without sufficient recognition of the fact that overall responsibility still remains with the licensee, which again I will come on to shortly. In some cases, a relatively small number of hours have been allocated to consultants to carry out this function, compared to the size of the firm, with the firm's focus being on the cost involved with the compliance function rather than its overall effectiveness. I would ask all of you as professionals in this audience, what is worse, spending a little extra funding on resourcing your risk and compliance functions, or running the greater risk and costs of sanctions and large fines being imposed and a public statement issued? And in the worst case scenario, individual directors facing potentially lengthy prohibitions. Contrary to popular opinion, imposing sanctions, fines and prohibitions is not something we relish doing. We take no pleasure out of it, but equally we will not avoid taking such action where the circumstances require this in order to protect the reputation of our industry and for the protection of investors. It is not only compliance functions being outsourced that firms need to be conscious of. This year, as many of you will know, we have embarked on some extensive and complex fund investigations, which have been well documented by numerous media, including Offshore Alert, Bloomberg, and the Wall Street Journal. Their published articles include extracts of the 1,100-page affidavit of Paul Yabsley of my division, who, as a consequence of open court proceedings, found himself in the unwanted limelight and as some sort of international celebrity. As you can imagine, not only are these proceedings lengthy, but they are fraught with many challenges as we go through them. It is therefore imperative that the Commission always gives careful consideration to the consequences when taking such action, due to the impact on the investors first and foremost, but also the public interest test and the reputational risk to the bailiwick if we do nothing at all. We have only brought these actions when others, who we consider may have been in a better position to make a call on the future of these investment vehicles, have, in our view, done little to resolve the issues underlying these funds. To date, the courts have shown support to the applications we have made, which can be extremely costly, but which we concluded gave investors the best opportunity to receive something back from their investments. We've actually been in court most of today, and at 3 o'clock today, we've just managed to get an administration order against another fund that is under investigation. So it is ongoing, it continues, and I can't see it ceasing in the near future. I would now like to touch on one issue that has been highlighted in investigations, both past and present, and that is investment management. Please remember that this is only in regard to the cases we have investigated and have had referred to us, which represents a minute percentage of the sector as a whole. During the course of investigations, the operation of the investment management of collective investment schemes has come under scrutiny. The particular structure that has been causing us concern is where the principal manager delegates management to an investment manager, which is sometimes not domiciled within the bailiwick of Guernsey. Such a structure is widely used in the fund industry. However, the Commission has seen circumstances where those responsible for the governance of the fund, including investment management, have totally abrogated their responsibility for the investment management decisions, which is something we believe to be totally unacceptable. During our investigations to date, we have seen inappropriate and ineffective governance, monitoring and oversight of the investment management decisions, these being exploited by individuals and institutions who have conducted themselves in a highly ill-advised manner. As I have stated just now, such individuals and institutions are most likely not to be domiciled in Guernsey. However, our focus will be on the licence holder here, and they will be assessed against the bailiwick's rules and regulations accordingly. To be clear, I am not saying that such a fund structure is inappropriate. However, where it is used, the Commission expects an active role to be played by the principal manager in supervising the investment decisions. In addition, the Commission will require certain minimum standards of due diligence and monitoring by the administrator. And if an open-ended collective investment scheme, then also the designated custodian. Whilst each administrator, designated custodian, has to put in place monitoring and supervision procedures appropriate for the size and complexity of the business, the Commission would also expect to see regular reports from the investment manager being considered, with such reports including the likes of the fund overview, the performance statistics, and without me running through all of them, this is the type of activity we would expect to see. The Commission consider that where the scheme and supplementary scheme particulars to define broad investment objectives, the administrator and designated custodian should still subject investment decisions to careful monitoring, which may necessitate identifying the true nature of the fund's investments beyond the first tier, which is typically a special purpose vehicle. Whatever monitoring and supervision systems the licensee puts in place, the Commission will, even in the case of discretionary agreements, hold the licensee accountable for any failures in compliance with the rules and regulations. So I would reach out to the sector and ask them to think, if it doesn't look right, query it. If pushed back, query it again. If you are still not getting the information supplied to you to your satisfaction, you then have choices to make. Do I risk my firm? Do I risk my career? Do I report it internally? Do I report it to the Commission? Do we, as a firm, cease the relationship? These are big decisions for the industry to make in a competitive marketplace, but we only ask that you look at the consequences if it goes wrong. If I can now move on to conflicts of interest. Carrying on with the same theme, during recent investigations involving firms within the fund sector, we again found that conflicts of interest are not being managed as effectively as we would expect. I